Hi everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of August 23rd, 2021, where we have quite an intense sky playing out this week as well. And also, there are going to be certain really strong trines in the sky. Trines are celestial conversations of supreme harmony, so they are always blessings. So this is always a really positive note. This can always feel like either a fulfilled hope or an optimistic infusion, if this makes sense. And at the same time, for some people, this will definitely be like a divine intervention. But besides these blessings, we also have quite delicate celestial conversations which are not as tensionate as things, used to be until this present moment, but they represent a different kind of tension, if this makes sense. An inner tension, or a tension where all of us, our own individual ways, are seeking the truth quite passionately, quite intensely, and this may not really lead us to anything solid, anything logical, rational. Whatever we discover or whatever we find out may not really be a very valid picture of whatever we were seeking. May it be something personal, or the truth about what's going on in the collective, or perhaps even information that we might need to anticipate the close future in order to prepare ourselves, financially, materially, spiritually, psychologically, in every possible way to make the very best of what we can. Because at this point it is clear to all of us that everything is really under a shroud of mystery, and it is definitely ruled by chaos. A lot of things already, neither personally or collectively, are not really under our control. Also, we start the week with two very important energy shifts. One of them being Uranus finally going retrograde. All of last week, we had Uranus standing still in the sky, and whenever a planet does that, its symbolism is greatly amplified. And with Uranus, we could see clearly all of the disruptions, all of the chaos, and all of the surprises which shocked the whole planet. And to add to this, the natural calamities, the chaos within nature, within our physical world, was also emphasized on. But we might not have that much respite from that, because Uranus's simple presence in the sign of Taurus, which represents the crust of the earth, the physical earth, the stability of the earth, well, until 2026 we can expect a lot more surprises from deep within the earth, as in tectonic movement, earthquakes, volcanoes, weather, for example, wind, electricity, technology, electronic devices, internet cutouts, etc. So this is basically part of the theme until 2036, but in theory at least, when Uranus is retrograde, we embody its symbolism, so it's more like an inner Uranus. So that's our mental sphere, that's our rationality and logic, our higher thinking, our communication from a more technological perspective. Uranus is also the planet of revolution, rebellion. When it turns inwards, this expression is going to be that much more emphasized, from an individual perspective. So we have the tendency to be that much more rebellious, not being able to bite our tongues, not being able to contain our anger or whatever triggers us. But of course this also has very good qualities: brainstorming, the best ideas, eureka moments, powerful epiphanies, moments of sudden realization. And the sign of Taurus has a lot to do with, love and everything that we enjoyed, all the pleasures of life as well. So perhaps the surprises, the unexpected, and this act of rebellion can have so many wonderful, pleasantly surprising expressions individually when, some people who are, for example, introverted might have just a moment of courage when they express how they feel, they express their love, they express, their admiration towards someone, and that can lead to something really, really positive. A retrograde Uranus is always good news from a scientific perspective. Let me just give an example. Certain theories, experiments that were not successful in the past can be resumed with, another perspective, second opinion, a different try, a different approach, and they might lead to success. This is also the energy of scientific breakthrough, because Uranus is, embodied that much more. It is turning inward, so this is always a blessing for scientists, researchers, etc. And even with its more disruptive qualities, when technology fails, electronic fails, well, the failure itself is basically a truth, which leads to research, so we'll just fix it and improve it that much more. Now, another thing that I would like to mention, with Uranus going retrograde at the very beginning of the week, well, we have our major outer planets retrograde: Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, now Uranus are all retrograde, so we might feel a little bit that the universe is asking us to take a bit of time out, slow down everything that kind of depends on us. It asks us not to rush, it asks us not to make very random and quick and heated decisions, and it also asks us, Saturn retrograde especially, and if we add to this Neptune and then Pluto, the hand of fate basically, and Uranus, our higher way of thinking, our divine intelligence, if this makes sense, well, we need to take a look at everything in our lives and in the world as well from a rather karmic perspective, action and reaction. What ripples did our actions, choices, decisions cause in the world, in our lives, relationships, and of course lives of other people? If we have to change something within us, what exactly do we need to change? And the measure of that change, how much power, Pluto retrograde, do we have over ourselves and choices and decisions? Because no matter how we look at it, we cannot be totally sovereign, because many things in our lives depends on other people. And as a species, we are made to live in a collective, so that also needs to be taken into consideration. And that is also Uranus, humanitarianism, equality. And as a dichotomy, Uranus is also our uniqueness, individuality, and what makes us stand out, our personal individual rights. So these two have to be good bedfellows. There is a saying in my culture, if you are an enemy to the world, and this is so very suggestive when all the outer planets are retrograde, because the outer planets move slowly, so they usually symbolize the world, things, aspects, functions, etc. in the outer world. And when they go retrograde, how we feel, think, etc. about that. So if we make an enemy out of the world, well, you can imagine that it is us who is going to lose this battle one way or another. So whenever we have the outer planets retrograde at the same time, and this happens every single year, it is a very good idea to try and embody peace and detachment as much as possible. Because if we, let's say, try and change the world very passionately, assertively, aggressively, or we try to fight for our own individual rights, Uranus, but in a foolish manner, well, you can imagine that it is only us that will have to suffer one way or another. This retrograde season of the outer planets always invites us to embody wisdom, to contemplate, to think deeply, and to always apply a spiritual perspective to everything, because it is basically karma if we learn and profoundly understand through the lens of the soul how karma works and basically what kind of energy governs karma in the present. For example, we know that Saturn is the lord of karma, so to speak, and it's in the sign of Aquarius. It means that it's extremely potent and strong, but it also means it's very quick. So, instant karma, instant justice. And if we want gratification or if we want anything positive, well, Saturn in Aquarius is humanitarianism, just like Uranus, but from a different nuance, if this makes sense. The well-being of the collective. The sacrifice that we make out of principles, morals, charity, etc. That is where the rewards can enter in our lives. And these rewards can be honors, it can be pure soul food entering into our lives from every possible source. And in Aquarius, we have to embody our greatest principles in a very balanced manner, where, as I said, we have to make sure that we don't make the world our enemy, regardless if our principles might not really be that aligned to the ones governing outer reality at the present moment. Now, another very important energy shift is the Sun leaving its home sign of Leo and entering the sign of Virgo. And first of all, I would just like to wish a very, very happy birthday to my soul sister Anka. Thank you for everything that you have done. Both of us know that I wouldn't be alive today without your kindness, so thank you so very much. Now, with the Sun entering this part of the sky, we already have a build-up of planets here, because we have Mercury, Mars, and now the Sun in this part of the sky. And when we have both Mars, planet of action, and the Sun, the light of our consciousness and, our creative energies, in the same part, well, that means action. That means that the sign is gonna be very active. Now, this Virgo energy is really, really good for certain things. And for certain people, it will definitely feel like a major blessing. The sign of Virgo has everything to do with mastery, with problem solving, with deep, deep analytical thinking. It is also really a good period always to take care of our physical body, where it is that we purify ourselves. Virgo the Virgin. Virgo always try to seek harmony in anything. And sometimes that harmony is not always balance. Not always like 50-50. Sometimes harmony means a little bit of imbalance. Virgo always seeks that which works, that which is practical, that which solves the problem, so to speak. And because we are all unique our ways, balance means something else for all of us. This is why some people also associate Virgo with discrimination. But this discrimination isn't the legal kind, isn't, political one, but it's simply seeing things for what they are in their natural state of balance. Whenever we have a very strong activity in the sign of Virgo, that is always a good period to balance out our spiritual lives with our physical daily routines. For example, it's a really good period to do a little bit more physical exercise, especially with Mars being in this part of the sky, yoga, to combine spiritual practices with physical activities. When we take a walk in the forest, etc., we truly allow that to even influence our physical selves that much more. Breathing is also really recommended. Anything which has to do with natural remedies, supplements, herbs, holistic things, that is also really, really advised in this period, because chances are it might work much more efficiently than at any other time. It's always a good period to clean our physical environment, to go through our stuff and sort it out, to make order. And Virgo is service and sacrifice as well. So things, objects, clothes, whatever that we do not need can be donated, can be given away, a sacrifice which ultimately returns back to us. Because the opposite sign of Virgo is Pisces. So even if this gesture of ours, this charity, doesn't come back physically, it comes back spiritually. In other words, if Pisces is our ethereal bodies and Virgo is our physical bodies, everything that happens to one will happen to the other. It's projected. That's why they oppose each other. So for example, if we make an act, a gesture where we truly do something positive, harmonious, healing or nurturing our physical bodies, that will reflect in the spirit, and vice versa. When we focus on something truly wonderful, healing on a spiritual way or ethereal way even, that will ultimately reflect in our physical reality. Now the negative expression of Virgo, and chances are we might experience this as well, because first of all, Mercury, the ruling sign of Virgo, is in this part of the sky and it opposes Neptune. So first of all, that is Neptune, our ideals, how things should be in the most idealistic way possible, and Mercury and Virgo, how things actually are. And Mercury and Virgo thinks and analyzes, criticizes especially the self. Why aren't you perfect? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? You don't have that much time left. Why did you waste time? Why did you daydream? Why not take very quick action, etc.? And all of us will have the tendency to do exactly this, hair split and just overstress ourselves with, why aren't things ideal and perfect in our lives, or our actions, why didn't they produce the most favorable result? Have we truly lived up to our principles, Neptune, or have we made some kind of compromises? But whenever our minds tend to enter into this Virgo kind of frenzy, we really have to detach, and we just have to, of course, listen to what our being says, but not allow it to demoralize us or to send us into a paranoid state of why. Sometimes things are the way they are, and this is what we have to work with. We can only try our hardest, and that has to be enough. And Mars in the sign of Virgo, it is actually trying. Even if we try 10 times without that much success, well, ultimately trying a repetition is the key to mastery, is the key to perfection. But because Mercury stands across the sky from Neptune, well, this is where we need to embody a certain kind of wisdom as well, because only a fool repeats the same action and expects different results. So you have to know what you're expecting. If you're following the guidelines, or if you are doing things in a constructive and versatile manner, again, Virgo is a mutable earth energy, well, of course, then you can expect that with each step you get closer to success, to accomplishment. But if you do this blindly, then you might embody the energy of the fool, because you cannot expect different results if you do the same thing in a fixed way. Now, from a collective perspective, Neptune standing across the sky from Mercury, very empowered Mercury and also very empowered Neptune, both of these planets are in their home signs, while the dominant power player is ultimately Neptune. So Neptune's shadow side is conspiracies, illusions, delusions, that which is not really true but can be seen as the truth. So you can imagine that conspiracies, what is true, what is not true, what is real data, what is just a deception, is going to be a main theme here. People are going to be passionate about this. They will have a lot of conflicts about this. because Mars also stands across the sky from Neptune, just that this opposition is not going to be exact yet this week. And the way we saw Mars opposing Neptune in the previous years, well, it's usually the dark side of spirituality. This is where people will try to get their ideals, personal ideals, through spiritual, mask, as in you dress up what you want to believe in a spiritual, aura of mystery and ancient wisdom, but the core of what you're actually trying to express might be just your personal fixation and you trying to justify it. So this will be a very, very active theme. And, what to do is very simple. Detach what you believe in your hearts of hearts. Neptune is your truth, and doesn't matter what other people say or how convincing people want to be. Take every other opinion just as perhaps a suggestion or a reflection of the other person's point of view. And also, we freshly had this Aquarian full moon on the 22nd of August. So the energy of that revelatory power, the shocks, the emotional reaction to all of the events that happened last week, well, they still linger in the sky. So that's why it's gonna be like an opinion-based battle and really fanatic truth seeker energy here. So my advice is to just detach and use this Virgo energy to solve your problems, whatever is in your life, in your mind, in your heart, and ultimately in your daily routines. This energy is meant to heal us, help us, detox, both physically and also mentally, Mercury, and spiritually and informationally. So use this energy where Mars is in this part of the sky to consume that inner fire, to consume the energy by cleaning, making order, sorting things out, coming up with plans, coming up with solutions, learning, of course, and reaching mastery in whatever you need in your life right now. Now, before I get into analyzing the trine, so the supremely harmonious aspects playing out in the sky, first I would like to mention that as soon as the sun enters Virgo, first it will hold a conversation of tension with Dark Moon Lilith in Gemini. So this is, be very careful who you criticize, and even if you necessarily have to criticize, the manner, the tone, the words that you use, because this can highly offend people. And since Venus is in the sign of Libra, chances are, who you offend are gonna be defended by their, Libra, the 7th house, partner, friends, those people who are very close and important in their lives. Now also, especially in my culture, in our astrology, Libra is also considered the 7th house, basically, the house of your open enemies, so those enemies who and everything is your opposing relation is very clear both to you and them. So be sure that by criticizing and expressing your opinion in a very harsh or toxic way, again Virgo, you don't offend someone in a very unjust manner, because Libra is also justice. So it might be that they might take you to a court of justice. So be very careful how you criticize, how you express your opinion. Because if you go over the board, it can, cause a big wound. And who it is that you offend or wound, well, again, Venus in the sign of Libra has loved ones, so, you get what I'm saying. And also the sun will speak in the same kind of conversation of tension with Ceres also from Gemini. And this might have a totally different kind of expression, because Virgo is the digestive system, so it can very well represent food in this context. Ceres is the goddess of harvest, grain, nutrients basically. And Gemini, one of its expressions is transport, mobility, moving, traveling. So there might be some kind of disruption in food distribution, transport. So you might experience food shortages in your local supermarket or whatever. So keep this in mind. This might be one of those weeks when it is really a good idea to have a few extra tins of the food that you like, to have a few extra bottles of water, the basics, just to feel safe and secure. And also, if you order your food or whatever it is online and it gets delivered to you, you can also expect, maybe delays or sometimes even mix-ups. So be sure not to allow that to trigger you, because this is the kind of energy which really can create a lot of error, a lot of blockage, etc. Now let's speak about the trines, so the blessings. At the very beginning of the week, we have 2 trines which are no longer that very powerful, but they are still influential. First is Venus trine Saturn, and this is always a beautiful energy. This can be some kind of gratification, maybe even delayed gratification, because Saturn is retrograde. Something that you have done in the past, maybe something charitable, something compassionate, the sign of Aquarius. The fruits of that might return to your life now instead of then. This can also represent any kind of favorable communication. Someone puts in a good word for you. For students, this is where you might excel at a project, at a study, at a discipline. A teacher might be very proud of you. This is also a really good romantic energy, especially for those who are in an established bond. You do something together which delights everyone. Or maybe something that you have done in the past as a couple, something charitable, helping someone, returns back to your life as a blessing, and that blessing is shared because you did it together. This can also represent, the energy of forgiveness, the energy of understanding. If you had problems in your relationship and you did the wise thing and be patient, talk it over, or give the other person time to breathe and think it over, that blessing can return to your life right now. This is also a good energy to sign contracts, or existing contracts can be upgraded, or something, just shows their fruit, the harvest, the reward right now. For those who work with the public, for those who are writers, communicators, motivational speakers, for example, or have any kind of business online where, you kind of have to speak with the public as well, either advertising or whatever. This might be a really favorable energy where something that you have done in the past or even recent past shows its results in a favorable way, or you get new customers, you get new clients, good reviews, someone puts in a good word for you. And Mars still holds the trine with Uranus, and this is an Earth trine, so it can be some kind of surprise, some kind of positive gesture, which is even materially rewarding. This can be where an action of yours hits jackpot, symbolically speaking, of course, where an idea that you expressed, communicated, shared with someone gets to be implemented. Or let's say out of the blue, because you are a highly experienced professional, or you have experience with something, you get invited to take part in a project or a collaboration, partnerships. So this is the energy of surprise, but that surprise element has to do with some kind of action of yours. Or that action can be you accepting, let's say, an invitation to be part of a project or any kind of lucrative purpose. Now also there is another trine in the sky, where a very strong Mercury, because it is in its home sign of Virgo and is in exaltation, holds a trine with Pluto. Now, to me personally, this looks like the energy of compromise, but it's a blessing. So whatever you compromise, well, it is more favorable to you. It is like a problem-solving energy, an easy energy, where the hardest part is saying yes. It is almost like, in tarot, the devil, Capricorn, the most positive side of the devil, where there is a union, there is an alliance, there is a solution, something manifests with strings attached, but those strings are, just a point of view. Maybe you have to set your pride aside and it turns into a massive blessing. It turns into a very, very easy energy. It can also be the energy of attraction, where you might be, let's say, advantaged because you're attractive. You can be attractive physically because an earth trine. You can be attractive mentally, your words, your speech, how you express yourself, Mercury, your way of thinking, your intelligence, your ingenuity, your good reputation, Pluto. And also take into consideration if this is any kind of offer or communication, Mercury, or a plan, or, any kind of advice or suggestion. Later on next week, the following week, Mars is going to hold the same conversation with Pluto, and that is the energy of action, doing. Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. So Mars, your willpower, whatever you invested energy into, gets results, but big results, because Pluto in Capricorn is, one of the expressions is wealth. One of the expressions is power, earthly power. Maybe that earthly power is influence. So it really comes as a blessing. So whatever this Mercury has to offer you this week, think about it, consider it, think it through if you have time left, because it can lead to something really, really positive, a breakthrough. You get what you want, basically. The other week, the following week, when Mars is going to hold this conversation with Pluto. And because Mars is going to stand across the sky from Neptune, well, as I said, this also suggests some kind of compromise where you have to tune down your ideals, your perfectionism, your expectations, your wildest big dreams and fantasies, and work with what you got, especially when what you got can actually solve the problem in quite an easy manner. Or if the help that you get, Pluto from Capricorn, someone's power and influence, will do the job, fulfill a need of yours, much, much better than if you stick to your ideals. So this might require to set your pride aside, to set your excessive moral standards aside, and just work with what you got, basically. Also Neptune standing across the sky from Mars. Something can seem like a blessing, but you can also hair split and find the moral flaws in it. So, dual Pisces. Is it a blessing or is it greed? Is it totally pure Virgo or is it an illusion, a Pisces? So, this is where you really have to focus on the need and the good that it will do to you physically, rather than stay up in the clouds and dream. This reminds me of a really funny analogy that I heard someone use in my culture, that, someone suffers a great flood and they manage to get up to the roof, but the water will overwhelm them in some time, and they pray to God, please help me, etc. And they have a lot of faith. They know that God will 1,000,000% help them, and a helicopter comes along and the soldier invites that person to jump on the ladder, and that person declines. No need for this because God will help me, and the person ultimately dies. They drown. And on the other side, well, that person goes to God and says, well, what happened there? I trusted you, and God said, well, I sent you the helicopter. And the person says, well, that's not the miracle I was expecting. So, a very concrete example of this, you need some kind of urgent help, or you have something to solve, Virgo, a down-to-earth problem, and someone has the solution, but maybe someone who wronged you in the past, but they already apologized and they see this as an opportunity to actually make up for whatever wrong they did to you, and they offer and they are even insistent, and you say no, because your pride, or you cannot forgive them, or you cannot accept it from that kind of person. And divine help is there, because divine usually works through people the path of least resistance, but no one can force you to accept it. So if an ex-enemy, an ex-opponent or adversary, or maybe an ex-partner offers you a help, solution, whatever, this is where you have to kind of accept it. Especially if it's unconditional and the strings attached are just pride and stuff like that. So things which aren't truly real. And also we have in the sky two very important quincunxes. If you remember, quincunxes are minor celestial conversations which link together two areas of life which apparently have nothing to do with each other. And it is really up to us and our perception what we make of them. We can treat them as humor, we can treat them as awkwardness, we can treat them as surprises of the pleasant kind, or really weird coincidences. It is really, really up to us. One of these quincunxes is held between Venus and Uranus, and there is a strong synergy here because Venus rules both Libra, where she is right now, and also Taurus, where Uranus speaks from. So I do think that this is a Venusian kind of quincunx. What I mean by that, well, it can be money, one of the most primary expressions of Venus, value, worth, love, romance, and because she is in Libra, it can be very, very romantic, idealistically romantic, the kind of romance that you read in stories. And Uranus, it's surprise, it is shock, it is the unexpected, it might be even chaos. So this can mean that maybe money comes to you, a gift, a present, or romantic declaration from someone who you might not even dream about. It comes as a total surprise. And it really, really makes you think. Of course, there is potential in there because you can always look at it from a very positive perspective and not be shocked in the negative way. And what I mean by that, well, what's the hidden intention? Why does this person feel like this? What are they truly after, etc.? But this can also play out in a different way, where it might be you who is that Uranus in Taurus. You might want to declare something to someone, or you might be planning a romantic surprise, a big symbolic gesture to show your feelings. And in this quincunx, be careful because it can go either way. It can truly exceed your expectation and that person might be delighted to the maximum, but they can also treat it as something awkward, something very uncomfortable, so be very careful. Apply measure here. Or if it's a present, a gift, well, what I can suggest, make sure that it's not, and I'm sorry to say it like this, but I don't know how to express it otherwise, it is not something cheap. Taurus doesn't really like cheap. And also make sure that it's actually symbolic, so you express what you want in a clear manner. For example, the color of the flowers or something that everyone can understand very easily. But at the same time, don't go into the opposite. If you make it extremely expensive or extravagant, that might also defeat your goal. And another quincunx is between Mercury and Jupiter. This is also, a surprise and a risky situation. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune after all, and in Aquarius, society, local community, your friends, your acquaintances, those people who are in your life, and everyone is included, even, the clerk, even the little lady down the shop, everyone, a neighbor. And you might get something that you asked for, a wish might be fulfilled, but by a person who you might really, really not expect it from, so it can go either way. This can also represent a good advice, a really nice conversation, communication, a methodology being given to you, taught to you by someone quite unexpected. And this is where you need to make a clear judgment, in the sense that if it's something so optimistic, Jupiter really likes that it's way too good to be true, well, take it with a pinch of salt. Don't exclude it, but don't really believe with every fiber of your being in it. And of course, vice versa. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't risk. And also, a very empowered Mercury, well, Mercury's shadow side is Mercury is the god of thieves after all. So be very careful not to allow yourself to be deceived, even if the deception isn't of criminal nature, but adverts and offers from banks, from companies, and all the small print. Read everything before you sign any big legally binding document. And a clear example of this, when you browse online and you see certain items and you see something that is really so nice, so wonderful, and you buy it, and when you actually get the delivery, it's a miniature something which you can't actually use, but it's actually what you got. The picture is 100% reflective of that. It's just the size that makes it what it is. And last but not least, we also have a minor astrological conversation where the asteroid Pallas Athena is conjunct Neptune. Now this energy can have a really positive side, because Pallas Athena is goddess of wisdom, tactics, tactical warfare. She's almost like a very disciplined, a very, very logical female Mars. And Neptune can be seen in very many ways in this conversation. For example, you might receive dreams, you might receive certain, intuitive impulses, synchronicities, which kind of show you maybe the future or an advice or something that you need in your life in a very literal way. Where, like you dream with an acquaintance, someone from your past, and another day or the days to follow, you meet them literally exactly as you saw in the dream, and maybe that person helps you or guides you, or that meeting of yours will represent something important to you, and you don't even know it yet, in this sense. Another really positive example, maybe you are in a situation of any kind where you are absolutely lost, you just don't know what to do, and maybe the divine Pallas Athena tactics will somehow guide you in the most miraculous ways, where just following your intuition will get you exactly where you need to be. The not so favorable expression, it is manipulation, deception, lies in the form of spirituality. So when you might hear modern day prophecies, who thinks what is gonna happen, where people interpret the signs, or everything is a hoax, or everything is real, whatever, don't allow yourself to be deceived, because this is not just an error, this is not just their own fantasies, this is not just them, expressing that which they feel, even if that is a little bit illusionary, but this is where it's actually planned and there is tactics in it. So be very careful, because this is a very manipulative and spiritually deceptive energy. Now, all of what I said sounds like an interesting week, and it might even be that from a purely individual perspective. But, let's be real, on the world stage, we will still be under the influence of that Aquarius full moon, spirits, tensions, everyone's nerves are gonna be triggered. There are gonna be protests, Eris squaring Pluto. There are going to be a lot of discussions about discrimination, the law, legislation. Pluto squaring planetoid Humia in the sign of Libra. Uranus retrograde, well, this is when more and more people will finally just snap and go out and protest. And also with this Mars and Neptune opposition, and where Pallas Athena is there, I'm so sorry to say this, but this is where spirituality is going to be at its worst. Someone, like a spiritualist, a mentor, a guru, a guide, someone who you listen to, if during this period they will say, I really don't know, and seek for the truth within yourself, that is actually the truth. That is something that you can truly trust. When someone is very convinced of anything, when someone is extremely persuasive, when someone is flooding the internet with facts, conspiracies, advices, how to manifest this and that, now that immediately reveals itself for what it is. And perhaps the more negative expression of this, because spirituality is more like a philosophical energy. From a collective perspective, people can actually detach from it, but when it gets to a psychological manipulation and warfare, and that psychological manipulation is extremely aggressive, and by this I mean every media channel, internet, social media, mainstream media, news, what you hear on the radio, and also what certain citizens, people are already almost possessed to preach and to debate and to discuss over. Now that is going to be the darker side of this energy, where it can actually drive us insane. So again, use this Virgo energy to detach, use this Virgo energy to take care of your life, yourself, your own daily routines, your own rituals. Dedicate all of your power to protecting yourself, even from a psychological, spiritual, physical, from every single perspective. Like any Virgo season, go out in nature, any kind of healthcare ritual, learn and study that which truly delights you and you find it useful. Clean, sort out your old stuff, spend time with pets, animals, go out and, be with the trees and the plants. All of those things are really, really, really helpful at this time. Because, at the end of the day, basically the spirit of the tree, if this makes sense, will just inspire you as well not to care. What does all of this, what's going on in the world, mean to the tree? Absolutely nothing. Chances are, if it's like a really old tree, it has seen how many world wars and much more than this, and it's still here. So basically take the example of the tree and just detach and just live your own existence. So this concludes today's horoscope. Thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone a blessed and magical week. Until next time, bye for now.